Receptive apparatus. In order to define the relation of our psyche to the external world and to determine what, in our receptivity of the world, belongs to it, and what belongs to ourselves, we need to turn to elementary psychology, then examine the mechanism of our receptive apparatus. The fundamental unit of our receptivity is a sensation. This sensation is an elementary change in the state of our psyche, produced, as it seems to us, either by some change in the state of the external world in relation to our consciousness, or by a change in the state of our psyche in relation to the external world. Such is the teaching of physics and psychophysics. The correctness or incorrectness of the construction of these sciences we shall not examine. Suffice to define a sensation as an elementary change in the state of the psyche, as the element that is, as the fundamental unit of this change. Feeling the sensation, we assume that it appears as the reflection of some change in the external world. The sensations felt by us leave a certain trace in our memory. The accumulating memories of sensations begin to blend in consciousness into groups and, according to their similitude, tend to associate, to sum up and to be opposed. Sensations that are usually felt in correlation with one another will arise in memory by association. Gradually, out of the memories of sensations, perceptions are compounded. Perceptions are, so to speak, the group memories of sensations. During the compounding of perceptions, sensations are polarized in two clearly defined directions. The first direction of this grouping will be according to the character of sensations. The sensations of a yellow color will combine with other sensations of a yellow color, sensations of a sour taste with those of a sour taste, and so on. The second direction will be according to the time of the reception of sensations. When various sensations, constituting a single group, and compounding one perception enter simultaneously, then the memory of this definite group of sensations is ascribed to a common cause. This common cause is then projected into the outside world as the object, and it is assumed that the given perception itself reflects the real properties of this object. Such group remembrance constitutes perception, the perception for example of a tree, that tree, then into this group enter also the green color of the leaves, their smell, their shadows, their rustle in the wind, the roughness of the bark, etc. All of these things taken together form, as it were, a focus of rays coming out of the psyche, gradually concentrating upon the outside object and correlating with it either a positive or a negative sense. In the further complication of psychic life, the memories of perception proceed with the memories of sensations. Mingling together, the memories of perceptions or the images of perception then combine in various ways. They sum up, they stand opposed, they form groups, and in the end they give rise to concepts. Thus, out of various sensations experienced in groups at different times, a child gets the perception of a tree, that tree, and then afterwards out of the images of perceptions of different trees there emerges the concept of a tree, i.e. not that particular tree, but trees in general. The formation of perceptions leads to the formation of words and the appearance of speech. The beginning of speech may appear on the lowest level of psychic life, during the period of living by sensations, and it will become more complex during the period of living by perceptions. However, unless there are concepts, then it will not be speech in the true meaning of the word. On the lower levels of psychic life, certain sensations can be expressed by certain sounds. Therefore, it is possible to express common impressions of horror, anger, or pleasure, and so on in this manner. These sounds may serve as signals of danger, as commands, demands, threats and such, but it is impossible to say very much by means of them. In the further development of speech, if words or sounds express perceptions, as in the case of children, then this means that the given sound or the given word designates only that object to which it refers. For each new similar object there must exist another new sound, or a new word. If the speaker designates different objects by one and the same sound or word, then it means that in their opinion the objects are the same, or that knowingly they are calling different objects by the same name. In either case it will be difficult to understand them, and such speech cannot serve as an example of clear speech. For example, if a child calls a tree by a certain sound or word, having in view that tree only, and not knowing any other trees at all, then any new tree they may see will be called by a new word, or else they will take it for the same tree. The speech in which words correspond to perceptions is made up of proper nouns. There are no appellative nouns, and not only substantives, but also verbs, adjectives and adverbs have the character of proper nouns, that is, they apply to a given action, to a given quality or to a given property. The appearance of words of a common meaning in human speech signifies the appearance of concepts in consciousness. Speech consists of words, with each word expressing a concept. Concept and word are in essence one and the same thing, only the first, the concept, represents the inner side, and the second, the word, represents the outer side. Dr. R. M. Buckey, author of the book Cosmic Consciousness, describes a word, i.e. a concept, as the algebraical sign of a thing. It has been noticed many times that the brain of a thinking man does not exceed in size the brain of a non-thinking wild man in anything like the proportion in which the mind of a thinker exceeds the mind of a deviant. The reason is that the brain of a Herbert Spencer has little more work to do than the brain of a primitive. For the simple reason that Spencer does all of his characteristic mental work by signs or counters which stand for concepts, while the primitive does all or nearly all by means of cumbersome reaccepts. The primitive is in a position comparable to that of the astronomer who makes his calculations by arithmetic, while Spencer is in the position of one who makes them by algebra. The first will fill many sheets of paper with figures, and go through immense labor, while the other makes the same calculations on an envelope and with comparably little mental work. R. M. Buckey, Cosmic Consciousness, page 12. In our speech, words express concepts or ideas. By ideas are meant broader concepts, not representing necessarily groups of similar perceptions, but embracing various groups of perceptions, or even groups of concepts. Therefore, an idea is a complex or an abstract concept. In addition to the simple sensations of the sense organs, color, sound, touch, smell and taste, in addition to the simple emotions, pleasure, pain, joy, anger, surprise, wonder, curiosity and many others, there is passing through our consciousness a series of complex sensations and higher or complex emotions, moral, ethical and religious. The content of emotional feelings, even the simplest, to say nothing of the complex, can never be wholly confined to concepts or ideas, and therefore can never be correctly or exactly expressed in words. Words can only allude to it, or point to it. The interpretation of emotional feelings and emotional understanding is the problem of art. In combinations of words, in their meaning and their rhythm, their music, in the combination of meaning, rhythm and music. In sounds, colors, lines and forms, individuals are creating a new world, and attempting therein to express and transmit that which they feel, but are unable to express and transmit simply in words, i.e. in concepts. The emotional tones of life, of feelings, are best transmitted through music, however it cannot express concepts, i.e. thought. Poetry endeavors to express both music and thoughts together. The combination of feeling and thought of high tension leads to a higher form of psychic life. Which is why visions or dreams find expression in prose. Thus in art we have the first experiments in a language of the future. Art anticipates a psychic evolution, and divines its future forms. In the present age, the average individual taken as the norm, has attained to 3 units of psychic life: sensation, perception and conception. Further observation reveals the fact that some people at certain times acquire a new 4th unit of psychic life, which various authors and books name differently, but in which an element of knowledge or ideas is always united with an emotional factor, forming a heightened dualism. If Kant's ideas are correct, if space with its characteristics is a property of our consciousness, and not of the external world, then the 3-dimensionality of the world must, in this or in some other manner, depend upon the constitution of our psychic apparatus. It is possible to put the question correctly in the following manner. What bearing upon the 3-dimensional extension of the world has the fact that in our psychic apparatus, we discover the 3 categories above described, i.e. sensations, perceptions and concepts? We possess such a psychic apparatus, and the world is 3-dimensional. So how is it possible to establish the fact that the 3-dimensionality of the world depends upon such a constitution of our psychic apparatus? This can be proven or disproved only with the aid of experimentation. If we could somehow change our psychic apparatus, and then discover that the world around us was also changing, then this would constitute for us proof of the dependence of the properties of space upon the properties of our consciousness. If we could, for example, adopt the above-mentioned heightened dualism of psychic life, which appears now only accidentally and depends upon uncertain conditions, just as definite, exact and subject to our will as the ordinary concept, and if the number of characteristics of space increased, becoming four-dimensional instead of three. This would then affirm our supposition and prove Kant's contention that space, with its properties, is a form of our receptivity. Alternately, if we could diminish the number of units of our psychic life and deprive ourselves, or someone else of concepts, leaving the psyche to act by perception and sensation only. If in so doing, the number of characteristics of the space surrounding us diminished, if for the person subjected to this test, the world became two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional, then indeed one-dimensional as a result of a still greater limitation of our psychic apparatus, by say depriving the subject of perceptions, then this would affirm our hypothesis, and Kant's idea could be considered proven. Kant's idea would thus be proven experimentally, if we could be convinced that for the subject possessing sensations only, the world becomes one-dimensional. For the subject possessing sensations and perceptions, the world to them is two-dimensional, and for the subject possessing, in addition to concepts and ideas, the higher forms of knowledge, the world is four-dimensional. More precisely, Kant's thesis regarding the subjectivity of space perception could be regarded as proven if for the being possessing sensations only, our entire world with all its variety of form should seem a single line. If the universe of this being should possess but one dimension, should this being be one-dimensional in the properties of its receptivity, and then if for another being possessing, in addition to the faculty of feeling sensations and the faculty of forming perceptions, the world should have a two-dimensional extension. If all our world with its blue sky, clouds, green trees, mountains and precipices should seem to them one plane. If the universe of this being should have but two dimensions, if this being were two-dimensional in the properties of its receptivity. Briefly, Kant's thesis would be proven, if we could be made to see that for the conscious being, the number of characteristics of the world changes in accordance with the changes of its psychic apparatus. To perform such an experiment, affecting the diminution of psychic characteristics is not possible under ordinary conditions, for we cannot arbitrarily limit our own, or anyone else's psychic apparatus. Experiments with the augmentation of psychic characteristics, however, have been made and are recorded, but in consequence of many diverse causes they are insufficiently convincing. The main reason for this being that the augmentation of psychic faculties yields primarily so much newness in the psychic realm, that this newness obscures the changes proceeding simultaneously in the previous perception of the world. One feels the new, but is not capable of defining the difference exactly. The teachings of religio-philosophic movements have, as their avowed or hidden purpose, the expansion of consciousness. This is also the aim of mysticism in every age and of every faith, the aim of occultism and of Eastern yoga. The question of expansion of consciousness demands special study, and time shall be devoted to this anon. However, for the moment, in proof of the above stated prepositions, and with regard to changes of the world in relation to psychic changes, it is sufficient to consider the assumption concerning the possibility of a smaller number of psychic characteristics. If experiments in this direction are not possible, then perhaps observation can furnish what we seek. Let's then put the question, are there not beings in the world, standing toward us in their necessary relation, whose psyche is of a lower grade than ours? Such psychically inferior beings undoubtedly exist, and these are animals, pets and livestock. Of the difference between the psychical nature of an animal and of a man we know very little. The usual conversational psychology does not deal with it at all, and we generally deny that animals have minds of their own, otherwise ascribing or romanticizing for them our own psychology, though limited, exactly how and in what manner though we do not know. Again we state that animals do not possess reason, but are governed by instinct. As to what exactly is meant by instinct, we do not ourselves know. This is speaking not only of popular but also of scientific psychology. Let's try then to discover what instinct is, and learn something about animal psychology, first of all analyzing the actions of animals in order to see wherein they differ from ours. If these actions are instinctive, then what inference is to be drawn from that fact? What are those actions in general and how do they differ? In the actions of living beings, within the limits of our usual observation, we discriminate between those which are reflexive, instinctive, rational and automatic. Reflex actions are simply responses by motion, reactions to external irritations, taking place always in the same way, regardless of their utility or futility, expediency or inexpediency in any given case. Their origin and laws are due to the simple irritability of a cell. What is the irritability of a cell then, and what are these laws? The irritability of a cell is defined as its faculty to respond to external irritation by a motion. Experiments with the simplest monocellular organisms have shown that this irritability acts according to definite laws. The cell responds by a motion to outside irritation, and the force of this responsive motion increases as the irritation is intensified, but in no definite proportionality. In order to provoke the responsive movement, the irritation must be of sufficient intensity, and each experienced irritation leaves a certain trace in the cell, making it more receptive to any new irritations. In this we see that the cell responds to the repetitive irritation of an equal force by a more forceful motion than the first one. If the irritation be repeated further, then the cell will respond to them by more and more forceful motions. Up to a certain limit. Having reached this limit, the cell then experiences fatigue, and responds to the irritation by more and more feeble reactions. It is as if the cell becomes accustomed to the irritation, and it becomes for the cell part of a common environment, with it eventually ceasing to react, because it is reacting generally only to changes in conditions that are otherwise constant. If, from the very beginning, the irritation is so weak that it fails to provoke the responsive motion, it nevertheless leaves in the cell a certain invisible trace. This can be inferred from the fact that by repeating these weak irritations, the cell finally begins to react to them. Thus, in the laws of irritability we observe the beginnings of memory, fatigue and habit. The cell produces the illusion, if not of a conscious and reasoning being, then at any rate of a remembering and habit-forming being, susceptible to fatigue. If we can be thus deceived by a single-celled organism, then how much more susceptible are we to deception by the greater complexities of animal life?